life is not a monologue, period. It's a dialogue. And the only way that you can create dialogue is to create an interactive space where it's not about one person, but it's about what can four people facilitate that can spark the 100 people that are there. I don't believe that one person like can actually create the environment where you feel included.
Hello, Lars. Thank you so much for getting on the show. I'm super excited for this chat. I think we have a lot of things to talk about. Yeah, thank you so much. Just a little bit of an intro for everybody. We're going to do like a proper intro, but I remember the first time we met, we had an amazing party in Budapest. That's like number one that we did, where I know that we are actually interested in the same kind of music. But also we were introduced to each other because you were organizing Vivel. And I remember we were sitting in one of the main squares of Budapest, and you were telling me about like something about NFTs, and then you were talking about different conference, and then we're gonna go through all these places, and I was listening. I was like, I don't think it's going to happen. I have to say, you're one of the dreamers that I ever met, because I'm just coming from Vivel. Actually, we finished a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I'm mind blown. And I've been various conferences, and I would like to congratulate on the first Vivel. It was amazing. Can you introduce the whole project for us a little bit of what is it now that we've done it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me, and also the nice words about, I guess, hearing the dream firsthand, being skeptical if it could actually happen, and then actually experiencing it yourself, and maybe getting some confirmations on what we spoke about in Budapest. And I think the whole concept came because of my own experiences. I missed certain elements of events that was very personal, that was kind of about the connection you have with people and the ability to share memories in beautiful locations. And I think that was the spark of like creating something that didn't exist. And I know that festivals have a certain magic to it. I know that certain conferences have a magic to it. And I know that there is, since COVID, a lot of other alternative projects that also have done a great job. For example, Circle is one of those examples. And then I thought, well, why can we not do all of these things, right? I host many Twitter spaces where I facilitate conversation. Why can I not incorporate that into panel talks? And why can I not bring people to circle style locations to connect with each other? So in my view, I felt like that was possible. We just had to do it with smaller numbers, because most conferences, the reason why they don't do that is because they feel the logistics are too difficult, because they're dealing with 500 people or 1,000 people. So I thought, well, if I make the number small, not only will there be quality connection, but at the same time, it would be possible to move them from place to place without too much hassle. And I think that's where I think the whole concept came together, is to focus on smaller numbers, high quality experiences, and beautiful locations. And I think that's where we went after. And I guess it was a dream to start, but it seemed that it was more doable than maybe people would have assumed.
Yeah. So what was originally the problem with conferences? Because I really can relate in many levels that you said. What do you think was what you saw before in conferences that was different in Vivel?
I think that most conferences are very transactional. It's like I have 5 minutes to pitch you why you want to talk to me even more. And I think that that's not a healthy approach to doing business. I think that business should be done by people and not by someone who can pitch really well. Because I think there's a lot of hidden gems that go under the radar because they might not feel so comfortable to share in that style. And I think that that's one of the things that's a problem with conferences, where you just need more time. You need to filter through people, feel into certain dynamics, and from there you can actually have a chat that is more personal. And then as a result, if you like that person, the chances that you ask, oh, so by the way, what do you do, comes almost at the end, rather than at the first thing that you do. Like, I think the business cards is a perfect example of like a symbolic thing that we did, where paper business cards is just like you're handing a number to everyone. Here's my contact, here's my contact. But if you have one business card and you intentionally like onboard someone into your world, then that has a different feeling. It's a lot more like, let's talk about it. Let's dive deeper. And I think that that's something that conferences sometimes don't pay attention to. They really are about the transactional side. And I think that it should be a lot more about the personal side, about the person behind the business, before you even start talking about what you can do for someone.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think whenever you go to a conference and you ask people why are you there, why people are there, they usually say, I'm there because of the people. I want to meet people. And then it's usually just goes into like a meat market of like, what do you do? What can I help you? What, like, you know, like it just gets into this vibe. Eventually what people want to do is like eat together and dance together. And then I just want to say for everybody who haven't heard about Vivel before, like how we started this whole experience was that we had a 4 a.m. phone call, and we stayed in amazing locations, by the way. This was in Hilton, and then we went to Radisson, which was like even better. And we get a 4 a.m. phone call that we need to head out for sunrise. We expected, you know, to go at sunrise, but we had an amazing electronic party at 5 a.m. So that's pretty much the kickoff. And then we had workshops, and then we had the next day we had talks. And I think that was like super amazing basics for like it's for actually going to different kind of workshops after that. We already had champagne at 5 o'clock together. It was a long day nonetheless. The other thing that I loved about this, what you've done is that, and I think that was super new, I've never seen it anywhere else, that you created you brought together 3 sometimes overlapping communities. So you brought together remote workers, Web3 people, and creators. Can you say a little bit like how this idea came? Because I think that was like one of the highlights for me.
So assumption, again, I would say I'm part of all 3 to whatever capacity you would like to say. So I guess I am the overlap between the 3, as like I am the audience. So for me, it was just like, I felt like they had so much in common. And because I can see that being in both communities, I guess all 3 communities, I think creators are the more general one, because creators can work remotely and can have elements inside of Web3. So those are the easiest ones to target, because they naturally would be interested in both. But I think the remote workers, they might be skeptical about Web3, and the Web3 people, they might be more skeptical about like how you manage remote work. And I think that's a beautiful thing, right? If you want to challenge the status quo, we have to put those people together and have them see that it's not so much about the way we give a word to it, right? I think that that's what's one of the things that came back in the conference quite often, is that we put a label on it, like remote work, or we put a label on it, Web3, but it's not about the label, it's about what it can do for you as a person or as a business. And I think that that's what had to come together to be able to come up with these new ideas, to be able to spark conversations between people that normally don't talk to each other. And people then beforehand said, well, this will never work because it's not clear which target audience you have. And I said, I'm very clear on what my target audience is. I just put things together that you don't think would work together. That's a different thing. So I think that was a test. It was an assumption. But I think it worked out. I think the people from Web3 are interested in like how they can set up remote teams. And I think the people in remote work are very interested in how they can build community together with Web3. So I think in the end, I think all of them had a lot of knowledge exchange. And I think that's what this is about too. It's about learning from things that you don't know anything about, and to be able to share your expertise to people that actually are willing to listen.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like whenever I go to nomad conferences or remote work conferences, because I learned that remote people don't call themselves digital nomads. And then that was just like a whole interesting conversation about where these labels are going to go at one point. But what I really liked is that I never actually hear about Web3, because what happens is that as soon, and then this happened to various friends of mine, and also especially girls, that when we start asking questions about this topic, I feel that I'm just like a rookie and I don't know anything about it, and I get lost in technical details. So this was one thing that for me was really interesting, because I would never go to a Web3 conference by myself. I would never, maybe, and even if I have a fear, or I had a fear that if I would go to a Web3 conference, then I would have no idea what's going on. I would need to pretend that I know what's going on, because I feel that, and then tell me if I'm wrong, but I felt up until now that there's a lot of ego in this, and I'm sure it's the same with various other places, including digital nomads and remote workers and content creators. But what is your take on this? Because I have to say that here I did not feel this ego at all, and it was like there was no gatekeepers.
Yeah, I think the assumption that people make is based on the bro culture that also people have in Web3, and it's easy to come through when the things that are famous or people are, like the space is known for, has everything to do with like communities and clubs. Because I think there's a very fine line between building a sustainable community and building a boys club. And I think that sometimes when that shines through more, it's very difficult for people to make it feel accessible, to be part of something that actually resonates with you. And I think for Web3, there's a lot of possibilities, but I think they're still very narrow-minded in the way that it can be used. Like, I very early on saw that there was ways to connect people through Web3, because the thing is, if I would explain it to someone who has never heard of it, that makes a big difference. It's like, for example, if you would book an Airbnb, would you ever know who else booked an Airbnb, and would you ever chat with them about it? Not really. It's more so an individualistic purchase that you don't really connect with like-minded people, but there is a chance that you have like-minded interests because you picked the same thing. And I think that's a very beautiful thing that Web3 offers, is that you get conversation based on your interest, based on your purchase behaviors, and that leads to opening up, like, let's say, a memory, like, I went to this place, oh, me too. And then you actually have a conversation starter. And I think that's a beautiful tool to use, where I don't think that most people are like even utilizing that or doing anything with it. And I think that's the new way to do stuff. Tickets as well, like you go to an event, it's something that you want to continue on. It's like, maybe those people I want to stay in touch with. And if I go to like a music festival, the chances of me actually being able to find those people again in an easy way is very difficult. So I think that Web3 is just another way to bring people together, maybe online, after you had an in-person experience. So we bring the digital and the physical a little bit closer. And that's why I see that Web3 can be a tool for that. It's not so much that it's the best way to do something, or it's something that you have to do or have to adopt. I just think it's another tool, just like AI is seen as another tool. I think this is also just another tool that you can use to further your cause or to build stronger and sustainable communities. So that's how I see it. And however you fill it in is up to you. But I do think it can really create like a stronger community that actually is aware of each other. And I think that in the past it's been very individualistic purchases, and I think with Web3 it became a lot more collective.
Okay, so do I get it right? So let's say that I go to Burning Man Festival, which I'm like a huge fan of, and then after Burning Man, my ticket would be an NFT, and then how would that go?
An example, what they could do is imagine that without the NFT, you cannot get into the Telegram group. It's a very simple one. So it's like the NFT grants access to a particular access point. So that can be a Slack channel, or it can be a Discord, it can be a Telegram group, it can be a discount to a particular, like a future ticket of Burning Man. Like, you can do anything with it, right? Because all of a sudden, it's like a Google login. Like an NFT, you should see it as a Google login, where if you have it, you get into certain places. If you don't have it, you get blocked from that same access. So if you go to Burning Man, it opens up the ability to find other people that also went, because they actually have a proof that you attended. And now you might have a ticket with a PDF, but how can you transition that particular ticket into actually providing future access to things?
Okay, I got it. All right, this makes sense. And then, so you use the same system for Vivel as well. What it includes? What's your idea about that?
So I think that we did obviously a lot of manual onboarding because, like you said, many people are not familiar with this, and we don't want to make it more difficult than it needs to be. So I think the biggest thing that we did is we brought in a partner that is specialized in NFT tickets and memberships. They're called WAC Me Guide, and basically what we asked them to do: can you provide a membership for everyone that went to Vivel? By just providing an email address. And I think that was the step that I think is people are willing to take. And maybe they want to learn more about it, maybe not, but in the end it doesn't matter, because they can log in with their email address, and then from that moment forward they get access to certain perks that we can continuously add to. Right now there might be a lifetime deal for software, or a course about a certain topic that you can access. But in the future, we can add anything we want behind that. And if you are a member of Vivel, you can get access to that. No matter if you went this year or in 10 years, it does not matter, because it's a continuous community that will be built, and everyone inside of it will have access to each other. And that's, I guess, we use Telegram, but you can use any platform to be able to actually know who else is in the community. And then you can take it outside of the community as well if you want. But it's really just providing a place where everything can be centralized. Even though this is all decentralized, I do believe that there needs to be a central place where you can find all these things, and can talk to people that you maybe met in person.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And what I see, what you tell here, and then what I felt during the entire experience is that this wall that this bro culture is building up, it starts to come down, because there are individuals who understand that the way how to actually bring it mainstream is to bring down these walls and stop being like a little bit of, I would say egoistic or narcissistic about this. And then another important topic that you say is that this is just a tool, and then this is a technology that you can use. And I think that's something for me that's really helpful to understand, that this at one point I will be able to understand, and I will be able to use this kind of tools to make my life better, to make communities better. And while we're at it, there was one aspect that I really like, that you had a saying that I actually included in my newsletter, because I was like mind blown. I was organizing various conferences, and I love community building, and I'm really into community building. I saw you, but you were not being put on a spotlight for the entire show. You talked a little bit in the beginning. Maybe that's it. Like you said, I think like 5 sentences in the beginning. Welcome, thank you so much for being here, blah, blah, blah. And you were hosting one panel, and I think one or two panels, I don't know. And when I said like, this is amazing that you don't actually, not only you, but like the whole team it felt like everything was so in flow, and then everything was not like, there were no people shouting, it's like, get on the bus, blah, 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 like not this school vibe, but it was absolutely, you could feel the decentralized part of the community. And do you remember what you said when I complimented on this?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I cannot take full credit for this, because it's also been taught to me. So it's like something that I took to heart, and it helped me to, again, I have organized events myself, and I think that if you have the right people around you, and you have the right attendees, and you have the right facilitators, you can trust, you should, and you can trust on their abilities. And I think that that's the most important thing for a leader, is not to be the one, that takes all the steps forward because what happens is if I'm the one that's always leading and I'm the one that's always telling people what to do, guess what happens? They're going to stand behind me and they're going to wait for me to do something. And that's not how an event should be. If you want co-creation, you have to take a step back so that everyone else can take initiative and do their things in the way that they feel like doing them, because that's when people feel like in their element. That's when people feel like heard and seen. And I think that's the elements that I think a lot of organizers don't take to mind, because they want it to go their way. They want to control the outcome. But I think that the letting go part is exactly what's actually going to lead to getting like the feeling that you had, because it wasn't about one person having it their way. It was about what is the experience for each individual and how are you going to show up. And I feel like the big word, that maybe decentralized is not the right word. I think it's like self-agency. This is what I believe is one thing very important, because if everyone has good self-agency of like, I know when I should stay in my room and recharge, or I know when to maybe go out and take the lead somewhere where I might not even be in that place, but because you feel responsibility, because you have self-agency, you actually take the responsibility of what in the past would have been me trying to facilitate things. But I think that that's the beauty. If you curate the audience beforehand and you really do a good job of intentionally selecting the people that come, that all have that self-agency or that level of frequency that you need, you don't have to worry about the outcome. They will do the job for you because they actually care about the outcome for themselves and for the people around them. And I think that's the biggest difference between someone who leads by just being everywhere and someone who actually steps back and lets other people fill it in however they want to fill it in.
Yeah, was it difficult at times to like remind yourself?
Yes, I think that someone also mentioned to me during the event, because they saw my face change in certain moments when it was like not supposed to go that way. The beauty of that is that nobody else knows it's not going as planned. The only one who knows is you. And I think that's something that you just have to accept. And a beautiful saying that someone said, it's like, Lars, your only job is to facilitate the space and don't let your ego in the space. If you do that, it will work out just fine. But the moment you step in with your ego into that space that you facilitated, it changes the dynamic of the space. So as much as you want to do things about it, you already done your job. You facilitated the space. And from there, all beautiful things can unfold. But the moment you try to control the space where your ego is there, then the space is not safe, because it's like, I decide, or it's ego, it's me, I, where we're creating this together, right? We have 100 people there. It's not about me, it's about the collective of the 100 people. So I think that that's the biggest advice I can give to any organizer or any even business leader. Like, just facilitate the space, have the vision. I think that's important though. You do need a vision, because without a vision, there's no direction. So you need a vision and you need a space. And from there, you just have to let it go.
Amen for that. I really wish that many people would take this initiative, because there's still, I think we are confusing leadership with power. And then here's the saying that you said in that night. When we were talking about, you said it's not about power, it's about empower. And that
empowerment.
Yeah. And I was like, I really feel that if the world would take this part seriously, and then if the word, and then I'm not only talking about conferences and our life, but if everybody who's a leader, including business, including politics, if it would take the power out of leadership and then exchange it for empower, then everybody could flourish, and the community wherever we are is going to be more diverse and colorful instead of what we have right now. And another thing that you did I would say, and I'm not sure how purposeful was this, but I think it was, when we didn't have talks, I'm like, what's happening? I'm in a conference and there's no talks. what happened?
Let me first go on to the power versus empowerment, and then I will explain the reasoning behind why there was only panels and there was no talks, like traditional talks of what you would expect at a conference. So I think what we have, kind of the old world versus the new world, if you would like to call it that. So power is based on fear, and empowerment is based on love. So for me, we have two emotions as people. We have, like, to control anything or to do anything, there's two emotions that are very present in people. It's either fear or love. Like that's the drivers of people. And I believe that people that are continuously trying to implement fear, they want to keep things the same. And I think the people that act out of love, they overcome fear, and things change when you're in that mentality. And I think that's if you see love and fear, it's like power and empowerment. So I think it's an easy way to check on yourself where you're at. If you're acting out of fear, that means you're acting out of power and wanting control. And if you're acting out of love, that means you're acting out of an empowerment position, and that means you want further the cause of someone else. But indirectly, it's also yourself, right? We always start with ourselves. But to be able to empower others, we first have to take care of ourselves. So that's, I guess, the best way I can explain the contrast between power and empowerment. I think it's fear versus love.
I love it. When you were for example, in Viva, did you check with yourself when you try to control, like, hey, I'm acting out of fear? Is there like some kind of self-reflection at that point? Is it possible to do that?
I think I get goosebumps now, but so the thing is that I'm not the one that checks like on it. It's the people that really care about me, that also maybe know me better, that can recognize it when it's happening in me. And I think that's where your environment becomes very important. You need people that keep you accountable and call you out when certain things are happening, so that you can actually, it's like, yes, self-regulation and self-reflection is good. Most of the time, you cannot do that in the moment. So it's really important that sometimes you have people around you that just check upon you, like that come in your space when you're in that environment, that kind of say like, relax, it's fine, it's okay, we got this, And I think that's very important. So empowerment goes two directions, right? Like it's not a one-way street. And that comes to the point of why I chose panels over talks, is because it's not a monologue. Life is not a monologue, period. It's not. It's a dialogue. And the only way that you can create dialogue is to create an interactive space where it's not about one person, but it's about what can four people facilitate that can spark the 100 people that are there. I don't believe that one person can actually create the environment where you feel included. I think maybe the best speakers in the world can, but realistically, we cannot afford or do that in year one, where we can bring the best speakers in the world. I think there's only a select few that are acting out of consciousness and have the ability to make you feel included. Again, I wish we could afford some of these people in this stage, but we can't. So we have to come up with a way where you just bring great people together and you create like a living room discussion, because that's when people feel like they're actually a part of it without actually being a part of it. And I think that was the goal of the panels, is to facilitate something that people haven't experienced. Because there's also panel talks at conferences, but I also kind of know, if I put these types of people together, I think something is going to be created. And I think that's also curation. Just like you have to curate the audience that comes, you also have to curate the facilitators that you have. And that's not easy. I think that's the hardest job of any organizer, is to really be selective in who can or cannot participate in your events. Even though how big their name might be, how many followers they might have, it does not matter. It's about what is the frequency that they show up at, and how open-minded are they to these types of conversations. And are they coming from a place of, I have to say my part, or do they come from a place of, can I actually add value to whoever is here? and be part of a dialogue, not a monologue. And I think that's why we picked panels over keynote talks.
Yeah, and I think at one point when, so we had a conversation in the beginning, and at one point when in general a conference would go like, okay, this is the time when we have the questions. And then instead of that, he said, this is the time when we are open for comments. And that little sentence brought the audience on the same level, because it felt from the audience point of view like, okay, if I ask questions, you're the teacher, I'm the student. But if you're interested about what I have to say, then we're on the same level, and then we just have a conversation that is very cleverly, very smart way put together in a way that everybody can say something. And for that, I think that was really important what you say, and I didn't like something that I didn't see before is that it was a curated audience. Because when I would create something and everybody can walk into from the street, I would say I would have a little fear there for control. That they would say something that is not, that comes from ego, let's put it that way, which can happen, but it didn't happen here. It was a wonderful thing, and I wish we would have like at least 2-3 hours per conversation, because that was the moment when everybody became really empowered. I think that was, and like tiny things like this that you said. Yeah, tiny words that you use. Like you use comments instead of questions, and then you already put your community into the space of community, right? So when we are talking about communities, what do you think? Because you are all over communities, and me too, but you're coming from a completely different side, and I love it because you're coming from a technology side, and then you bring in all these when we talk about Web3, but and then you have all these amazing ideas around this. So I want to ask, like, what do you think is going to change when we talk about communities? Because I think there's a shift coming now, and I think you think that as well. I hope you think it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to. One of the panelists, Anastasia, always talks about this for like marketing side of things, right? So she says it's not so different, like going to traditional marketing or going to this new Web3 marketing. I mean, to be fair, we use the same things as we used before. It's not like we're creating something crazy new. I just think we're going more from like an individualistic perspective to a collective perspective. I think that's the big shift that's happening. It's like people crave to do stuff with a group of belonging, like a group of people that gives a sense of belonging. And I think that's the biggest shift that's happening right now, is that we might not be belonging to a country anymore. We're belonging to people that have like-minded ideas and visions of what this world should look like and how we should treat it. And I think that's where I think the big revolution comes, is where we actually can find these groups and continuously meet with these groups. And there is actually aftercare. It's not about, okay, we need you to make a transaction, and then after the transaction time is done, it's okay, that was it. No, it's more about how can you create sustainable community where, like, for example, right, if this was an event and we would not continuously do something afterwards, our Telegram group would have dropped in users or people that are part of it probably very quickly. We had probably 2 drop-offs out of the whole group. That was like, so let's say the number was 90, there's now like 88 people in the group. And I think that responsibility that you have to take to create aftercare, not only like short-term and long-term thinking is one of the biggest things that we have to understand as leaders and as founders of companies. Because if I would go from a short-term perspective, then I would not create a group. I would not sustain this community because I already got what I wanted, and that's the money to be able to do it. But if I think about the long term, if I actually maintain the relationship with everyone, if I continuously take in the input that they give, do you think they would come to another event? Most likely, yes, because they feel included. They want to see those people again. So in the long run, you actually have a really big business case here, but to see it through is something else. So I think that's what we have to start thinking about. The revolution is in the long game, the legacy game, rather than the survival game and like, what do I need now? And I think that organizers, especially from events, have you thought about where your event would be in 10 years? Yes or no? Like for me, it's a big yes. I've dreamed about the big picture very often. And I think that people that think in more short-term pictures, they haven't thought about where they want to take the whole community. And I think that that's a question that we have to ask ourselves. Where do you want your community to be? Not you, not your event, but where do you want your community to be? Because if your community grows exponentially, what's going to happen to you? Like I always say, when the water goes up, all the boats go up. Well, I think that's a very great saying when you start building from a long-term perspective rather than what do I need now?
Okay, wow. Can you tell us what you have in mind for 10 years? I'm super curious, but yeah. Is it public? Just only if you public, yeah, I completely understand.
No, I think it's a pretty simple, like, I don't want to increase the numbers of Vivel. So I think initially we thought, okay, we're going to do a yearly event. We're going to bring 100 people together. But like, I guess where we are now is we want to have a consistent event that happens every year in the same location to be able to attract a new audience, because the chances that retention happens when you go to the same beautiful location is not as likely. So that's like where the influx of new people coming into this strong community can happen. But the other two events, we want to rotate locations. So that means every year it's in two completely new locations, so that people that have already attended an event can feel like they want to attend again. And that's where retention happens. So you get, in 10 years, you have a group of a maximum of 1,000, 1,500 people, but it's built very organically and they have met multiple times. So it's super strong, and it can never grow by bigger numbers. So if you're part of it, it's special. Like, it's something that truly holds value. And I think that's the key. And that's another part of NFTs, right? If there is scarcity and you own your membership, guess what? You could potentially sell it to someone else, and that holds a certain value too. So in the long run, I'm thinking about this is like a networking group where it's a very limited amount of access, and it's not based on how wealthy you are or like how crazy of things you do, how many followers you have. It's a lot more about, do we resonate on the same frequency? Because that's the type of space that we need to facilitate. Like, I need to not have to think about like who is there, because I trust them. And that's something that if you can create a space of trust, everyone will always have a good time. To an extent, always things happen, but 90% of the time you have a good experience. And that's my 10-year vision, where I have no doubt that from the 1,500 people, 1,400 people, I will put my hand in the fire, and they're going to add value to someone's life, and they're able to receive from someone. So I think that that's my 10-year vision. It's not so much about how crazy of a event we have. It's more so about, we have 1,500 people in that community that I can vouch for no matter what. I think that's my 10-year dream of where I want to take it.
Okay, I have one more question, and then it kind of circles back to the beginning. So I started this conversation by saying you told me your dream, and then I was like, there is this guy, he has all these crazy ideas for a few-day event. I don't know how he's going to make it. He's not going to make it happen. So what do you recommend to people who have big dreams and who meet all these non-believers? Is there any recommendation that you can say to all these people who are dreaming about huge things, and then they know they can do it, but others don't?
I mean, I have two sayings that come to mind when you say this. I mean, I think do something every day, no matter how big or small, to get closer towards that dream. That's the first one. So it's like, it can be something super small, like one call that is in line with facilitating that dream is already worth your time. And I can say that 1 year of building every day, it stacks up. The intentions that you feel during the event is a stack up of every little action that was happening every day between me and the team to be able to get to where this first one was. And it's still not perfect by any means, but it's just it will continue. Like that stack up of intention will continue. So that's the first thing I will say. It's not about making big jumps. It's about making a lot of little jumps, and they're going to add up. Like over time, they will add up. And the second thing is, you have to have a mentality where you think global, but you act local. So it's not about changing the world. It's about changing one thing very specifically, but the mentality that you're doing it from a perspective that is global. So that's why if you do something, make sure you focus on your local environment. So if, let's say you're in Hungary, or you're in Spain, and you're in a specific city or a specific town, focus on that town, but go at it from a very global perspective. Because if you think global, but you're facilitating that in a local space, you will make impact. But if you reverse it, where you feel like you're in a local place and you really want to change the world on a global scale, most likely you will fail, because that's not realistic. You cannot change the world from the outside in. Like, you have to do it from the inside out. So I think that that's the best way that I can give advice, is don't focus on the bigger things, the great jumps, the crazy things. It's about having a clear understanding of where you want to go, and just do very much little things and focus on what you can actually, see, because the local part, the local cafes, the people from the restaurant. Like, why should you focus on a store owner that is across the world when you have someone right in front of you that you can impact, and you don't know where that's going to go? Like, the ripple effect can take it as far as you want, but you have to start in what you can actually see, and not go after things that you have no control over, because that's going to just lead to you being disappointed. So I think that that's the best advice I can give, is focus on the little steps and on the things you can actually see, and your own environment, rather than trying to influence things that are beyond your control.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with everything you said. I think so. Before I get to this podcast, I wrote down, like, how can this podcast be amazing, and then I just let, like, all the questions intuitively flow between us, and I would never know that we would get so deep with all the leadership mindset. And I really enjoyed this talk, Lars. I think you're a wonderful leader, I have to say. What you put together, obviously I'm a fan, so I'm super happy I was there on the first one, and I'm going to spread the word so that we would find all these people who think the same way as you do, because I believe in your mission, and I know that there are so many other people who believe the same way, and I do believe the global perspective now that you have for the word. And yeah, let's act locally, and let's see what else is there. And I guess I gotta see you on the next Vivel. Where can anybody else find more information? We're going to put it in show notes, but if you want to say anything, where to find anything, last things for the listeners, come up with it.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously can join the network, like, already, to be in the loop on when we announce the next one, and that's like vivel.xyz. So that's the website. You can just put in your email, and from that moment you will just get information, and you'll have the ability to use the link that you receive in your email to be able to check on the next event. So you can see, like, the schedule as accurate as it can be. You can see what speakers and DJs might be attending the next one. So you have access to see if it's something that you're interested in. So that's like one way to do it. If you're more like casual, like, you can just follow the Instagram, what is Vivel XYZ as the handle, and you can just stay up to date that way too. So whatever is your preference, if you want to already join the network, or you want to just kind of tag along and see what's happening, either way is a great way to stay in the loop on it.
Well, all right. Thank you one more time for being here, and I guess I'll see you soon.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and yeah, we'll stay in touch.